Okay, I think this is working. Hello. This is my first attempt at doing a stream on YouTube. Excited to be here. And tonight I'm going to be doing a sort of, I don't know, just a general sound design and jam stream using some of my Arturia stuff. I had a request to do some sound design stuff on the Microbrute over here. And figured I would give it a shot. And I will come out from the front here and say where I am streaming from is a bit of a mess. And I hope you will forgive me for that, but I did not especially feel like cleaning it up for this. So there we are. Quick little rundown of my stuff that I'm using tonight. Of course, we got the Arturia Microbrute here. We got a little Micro Freak underneath it. Over here, whoop, we have KeyStep Pro, which I'm still getting used to. And we have a little Korg Volca sample here. And as far as effects, we have a TC Electronic Reverb. And let's see if I can pull this out. Let's see. Can just barely see. This is my Pi Sound, which is a Raspberry Pi based effects kit. And right now I have it synced to the KeyStep so that I have a delay, which is, in tempo, which I have going right onto my Micro Freak. And I also have sort of a shimmery reverb going on there too. So I'm thinking tonight, whoop, there we go. I'm thinking tonight I will just make a couple sounds on the Microbrute, talk through some of my process as far as sound design on that. And once that's done, probably put together some pieces on the Micro Freak and sample, and just put together a little song. I also have plugged into here my Yamaha Reface CP, which is a little electric piano, which you'll hear during the jam stuff. But it's underneath my desk and inconvenient to pull out, so I will not do so. So I'm just going to scooch on over to my Microbrute and talk about it a little bit. Okay, so the Microbrute. Really wonderful synth, and the very first real synth that I owned. A friend of mine who I did music for a movie bought it for me sort of to complete the score for the movie since it was synth-based. And this is sort of what I learned the basics of synthesis on. I think it's a really solid piece of equipment, really great and very responsive. It's good to learn sort of the basics on, very user-friendly in my opinion, but also has a lot of potential as far as sounds that it can make. I tend to use it for sort of like, bassier sounds, but it also works really well for leads and arpeggiators as well. Worth noting is that it is a monophonic synth, right? So that means it can only do one note at a time. And I will usually have a bit of glide on sort of going in between notes and things. But, let's just dive into making a sound on it before we talk too much about it. So it's got 4 different sort of waveforms that you can choose from. The first of which is the overtone here, and I'm just going to be playing the notes on my KeyStep, but I'm going to be turning the knobs on here, so if you hear sounds coming out of nowhere, that's what's going on. So the overtone is, I believe, let's solo that. I'm pretty sure it's a triangle wave, maybe a bit off-kilter triangle wave, but fairly simple. And you can choose between just a sub, an octave down, or you can do a fifth. And even somewhere sort of in the middle. And this can be a really nice way to get some sort of more complex sort of harmonics going in your sounds. And it's worth mentioning that you can also modulate the amount that this is being plugged into your sounds by using the mod matrix, which we'll get into a little bit later. So that's the sub. Turn it down for now. Over here we have the sawtooth wave. And I'm going to go ahead and open up the filter a little bit so you can hear it more. And we have an option up top to do an ultra saw, which is basically just a way to add sort of additional iterances of the, or iterations of the sawtooth at a slight detune, which sounds like this. Which sort of just helps thicken it up a bit, which is nice. That also can be accessed from the mod matrix. Basically all of these 4 knobs here, you can control using the mod matrix, which is nice. A little bit further on, we have the square wave with pulse width modulation, which we'll be getting into for a bass sound in a little bit. And lastly, we have a triangle wave, which is a nice pure sound, good for sort of making sort of soft Moog style leads, and it's also got a little metalizer function here, which can pretty quickly give it a lot of bite, which I like. So those are the 4 main waveforms that we can choose from, and it's worth mentioning that you know, they go from 0 to sort of 100, but it's worth mentioning that the Microbrute sort of automatically adds a bit of distortion if you get a little bit higher up. So if it's going in at 100 with the saw, for example, it's not going to be quite as clean as just going in at 50% and turning up the master volume overall. But often that sort of works in your favor because it adds some more complex sort of tones to your sound and sort of fattens it up a little bit. But just something to be aware of if you're wondering why your sounds are sort of coming out a little bit distorted. But for now, I think I'm just going to go ahead and, let's say, turn the saw and the square each up to about halfway. And add in a bit of overtone too, and triangle as well. Why not? Just to show some of the other parts of this. Next up, we have the filter section over here. Of course, we have a cutoff, which is also currently mapped to this mod wheel. I'm just going to leave the mod wheel at about halfway and let the cutoff knob sort of control the frequency. I find the cutoff sound, or the filter on this sounds really nice in my opinion. It's got a nice sort of sweeping resonance filter as well, which I believe is self-oscillating, so you can sort of use it to get some tones, which can lead to some really gnarly sounds. You can choose between 3 different types of filter. There's of course the low pass, which will cut off some of the high end. There's the band pass, which will cut off a bit of high and low. So I'll just leave a selective frequency, and high pass will cut off the low end. And there is, this is not a documented feature, but some people have pointed out that there is a way to sort of fiddle in between the low and band pass settings on here. And you can get sort of a third, or a fourth rather, type of filter, which let's see if I can get it. Very finicky. You can get some pretty weird sounds out of that. Frankly, I have a little bit more trouble than it's worth, but I think there are some interesting things you can do with that when it comes to sort of using pitch as a modulator on the mod matrix. I think you can get sort of what's functionally a second oscillator going in, but that's a little bit more complex than we're going to get into tonight, so I will not get into it too much. I'll just keep that in low pass for now. We have the brute factor over here, just sort of a signature feature of the Microbrute. And it's just a really nice, fat-sounding distortion, more or less. And, you know, here's with none at all. And here's mean, just really gets very destructive towards the end of it. I will often have this on things about halfway up. But I mean, you can see using just, I mean, you know, we haven't really set up a synth, you know, we haven't done much effect at all, but with just, you know, dialing that brute factor, we have a bit of a bass going already, which is pretty nice. So that's the main section of the filter here. I'd like to also just note that there's a built-in envelope amount function here, which is really useful. And what this basically does is it just, you know, it more or less maps it so that the shape of your envelope affects the frequency of the filter cutoff. And this is by default. You know, it just is the modulation that's set up from this knob. You know, no matter what's happening in the mod matrix, you can use this knob to set that up. And of course, you can have it in the positive or the negative. So that means either that, you know, your frequency will go up with the envelope or will go down with the envelope for sort of a ducking sound effect. And this is, you know, functionally the same as just going to the patch bay over here and going from envelope to filter. The main difference being that this actually lets you do sort of different amounts, you know, which lets you fine tune it. So, you know, I think this is a really useful thing to get to know. And I mean, just for a sort of clear example of what it sounds like, you know, I'll turn it fairly high. Let's get a fairly short envelope going here and turn the filter down a little bit and hear what it sounds like. Sort of that classic sort of squeaky sound, which, you know, can sound really nice. You know, let's say we change the envelope so it's a bit slower and lasts a little longer. Maybe a little bit less of an intense effect. Really lovely. So we'll be playing with that, certainly, as we're making some sounds. And I think that, oh, lastly, before I forget, keyboard tracking, sort of a similar concept, but instead of the envelope amount determining how much the filter opens up, it's how low or high the note is. So basically, you know, if we set this up pretty high, it just means that, you know, if we play a very low note, the frequency of the cutoff filter is going to be pretty low. If we play a pretty high note, it's going to be pretty high. So that'll sound sort of like this. I'll play some really low notes. Can barely hear them. Go up a little bit, up a little bit, up a little bit, up a little bit. And it becomes, of course, even more obvious if we, you know, turn that up to 200%. So that's a nice way to sort of, I don't know, add a bit of dynamics to your synth. You know, especially if you have an arpeggiator going, that can really sort of liven things up as it's spanning across some octaves. I'll just set that back to this, make sure we can hear. Nice. And while I'm affecting this section here, now's as good a time as any to talk about the envelope section. And if you don't know synthesis at all, what this essentially does is it changes the volume of your synthesizer over time. So when I press the key, if I have all of these set just down to nothing, it's just going to be a little blip. Because what's happening is that, you know, the attack, which is when, you know, how long it takes from pressing the key to go to the maximum volume of the synth, well, it's set to 0. So that means as soon as I press a button, it's at max volume. But then the decay is also set to 0. So that's, you know, it goes from the maximum volume to the next step, which is the sustain. Sustain is what volume it's held at as long as I'm held in the key, holding the key rather. And it's set to 0. If I set this pretty high, you'll notice that now plays immediately and, you know, goes to maximum volume as long as I'm holding a button. But if I said it's nothing, then, you know, it's just decaying to 0 very quickly. Which doesn't sound like very much at all. And then release is how long it takes once I let go of the key to go down to 0. So let's say I have pretty high sustain and no release, sounds like this. And I'll turn the reverb off so you can really hear it. Almost immediately just goes down to nothing. But with a bit of release, say about halfway up, sort of rings out a bit. Nice. And you might notice up in this corner here, you can actually see that LED is sort of a nice visual reminder of the intensity of your amplitude envelope there. So that's just sort of a nice, clear visual marker of, how loud your envelope is. Let's see. Over here we have the LFO, which is just something that we can map again in our mod matrix section. And that can more or less control a lot of parameters. By default, it's set up so that it's controlling the pitch of your synthesizer. So right now, if I turn this on, if I move the amount up, let's say to there, hold a note, here's what we're going to hear. Pretty silly sound, honestly. This could be useful, though, if we turn the rate up a little bit and the amount down. You get sort of a classic sort of chiptune-y tremolo sound. And what we could do is if we go right next door to the mod wheel section, we can turn this to LFO amount. So now we can sort of fade that in. Oh, but I have to turn the cutoff up a little bit. So we can sort of fade that in. You hear if it's at 0, no real effect from the LFO, but if we tune it up, we get some overtime. So that might be useful if we're sort of, doing sort of a lead sound here and it's like... Often you'll want to use the pitch bend and the mod wheel together to get a really expressive sound. And you might have noticed right here, I just used our glide. I'll talk about that in just a sec. But I just want to double back to the LFO to say that there are 3 different waves that you can choose from for the shape of your LFO. There is a triangle wave, which I use here. There is a descending sawtooth wave. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go to my mod matrix. I'll explain what I'm doing in a minute, but right now I'm just basically making it so that the LFO is controlling the filter amount. I'm going to turn my filter down, and now we'll be hearing... Now we're hearing the filter controlling the amount of, or the frequency rather, of my filter. Or the LFO is controlling the frequency of the filter. And so you get that sort of sharp start with the saw wave that sort of gradually trails down. And square wave. Just, pretty much just an on-off. Which you can use to pretty good effect as sort of a delay. If we have a pretty fast filter, or a pretty fast envelope rather, and the rate of this is rather fast, if we do a little pluck, you get sort of a nice little fade out with that, which can be useful for certain sounds. And lastly, before we get into the mod matrix, the little control section over here has just a couple little things that are useful. One of which is the glide, which is more or less the portamento. It's how long it takes to go from, holding one note, and if I press another, the amount of glide in between them, how long it takes to slide from one to the other. If it's set to 0, it'll just go cleanly, which can be useful for arpeggiators or certain types of basses. And, you know, a pretty decent amount of glide is going to take a long time to slide between them. Which can be useful for, again, certain types of leads, especially sort of Moog style leads, sort of more old school style. I don't know. Generally, I think a little bit of glide is nice to sort of break up sounds a little bit, or rather to smooth them out, keep them from sort of, I don't know, being a little too mechanical. And lastly, over here we have the mod wheel selector. So this is, right now, it just goes between, you know, deciding whether the mod wheel is controlling the LFO amount or the cutoff. I tend to have it on cutoff. And I also have, over on my KeyStep Pro, I have my mod wheel there controlling the cutoff as well, which is nice. So, with all that out of the way, let's just dive into the mod matrix over here. I'm not going to be really getting into the sequencer tonight because I'm going to be externally sequencing this with my KeyStep Pro. But there is a fully fledged sequencer in here, which can be fairly useful once you get to learn how to use it. I don't, frankly, especially care for the tap rest thing. I think it's, you know, maybe I'm just, you know, born a little bit too late for it to be natural for me to use, but it just feels very clunky to me, and I have a hard time conceptualizing it. But if you're just doing like very basic bass sounds or something like that, perfectly fine. But I tend to prefer to externally sequence the Microbrute. In any case, the mod matrix up here. So if you are not familiar at all with just modular synthesis in general, what this section over here is basically a bunch of different, there's two different modulators, which are things that, you know, affect a certain parameter, like one of these knobs, and then there are little targets, which are the things that are being changed. I go over this in one of the videos that's on this channel, which is all about modulators in Helm, but the concept is the same here. So a modulation on a synth is basically just a way so that rather than having to turn a bunch of knobs very quickly to get a particular sound, let's say I want to change the cutoff frequency, right? Rather than, you know, if I want sort of that dubsteppy sound, rather than, you know, using one of my very precious free hands to just turn that knob, I can instead set it up so that something in the Microbrute is controlling this knob for me. And in this case, one thing I might want to use is the LFO, which is just a quickly, fairly quickly repeating sort of rhythmic shape. So the square wave is just going to, you know, basically every time this red light beeps, it's going to go through this shape of peak and trough. So it's going to give a high amount, so it'll turn my cutoff, say, you know, there, and then when it reaches the trough, it'll turn it down here. And just for an example of that, I'm going to take one of my little patch cables. A couple of them come with the Microbrute, and I'm going to make that connection that I just talked about. So I'm going to first plug into my modulator, which is the LFO here. I think it's probably too hard to really read the text here. Sorry, my webcam is not very good. Oh, I've angered it and it was going to attack the synth. Yeah, my webcam's not very good. But you go from the LFO to the filter here, and now that link is made. And all we need to do is now modify the LFO to the amount that we want. So let's, you know, say that we want exactly what I just talked about, which is a square wave where there's a peak and then a trough. What I would do is I would set the amount, you know, let's set it all the way to start so we can really hear the effect. And then we can set the rate, which determines how quickly it cycles through the shape. Let's set it fairly slow to start. If I turn it up, can, pretty immediately hear the change that the rate has on it. And you can actually set it up so that the frequency with which this cycles through the shape can be in sync with the music that you're playing. If you have a clock in or a MIDI in, or you can even set it up to the sequencer here by switching from free on this little sync option here to sequence. Now, if I had something loaded up on my key step, I could have that effect move in time with the song that I'm playing, which is really neat and very useful. And of course, the other modulator that we have over here, which is up here, is our envelope, which is just this shape here, which is basically, what's controlling our volume by default. Oh. But my LFO, I unplugged it, and now it's going back to controlling the pitch. I was wondering why I got that weird beep. So the envelope by default always controls the filter through the use of this envelope filter amount here. But you can also get it to control things like, for example, we can hear what it sounds like if the envelope is controlling the pitch, which is not, always going to be something that you want, but let's hear it. And I forgot to mention down here, this is sort of, this knob, the envelope amount, is similar to the LFO amount here. You can control how much the shape of the envelope is affecting this parameter by turning this knob. So if it's down low, it doesn't affect it very much at all. If it's up higher, you can hear it's starting to affect it quite a bit. And already here, we have a classic bad synth sound. Which is sort of that real cheesy, like sci-fi blaster sound. Let's make the envelope a little bit shorter, and we can really hear. This is like in 8-bit Tom or something, which we can really accentuate if we use the envelope and turn the cutoff down. Maybe make some use of the brute factor here. And that's not sounding so bad now. That's almost a functional kick. Pretty lo-fi, but it is functional. And what would really take it up to the next level is if we input some white noise into our input here, then we could have a bit of sort of graininess on top there. Unfortunately, I don't happen to have some white noise handy. Maybe what I'll do is I do have a little input knob here. Maybe I can try and just put my thumb. I have no idea how this is going to sound. I'm just going to put my thumb right here on the tip. And see if that gives us any extra. I'll turn the input volume up a little bit. So that'll mix in with the synth, depending on what our volume is, which is a knob on the back. So let's hear what that sounds like. Here's without. Here's with. So you can hear how just adding a bit of random noise in there adds a bit of, it sort of adds to the realism of it because it's not, really a perfectly pitched sound that's in some relation to this note that we're playing. It's just sort of random in relation to it. So it's sort of functioning as sort of the noise. In any case, I'll get that out of there for now. I feel like I've done a lot of talking here for a while, and now I am just going to take a step back and work on just making a noise. And as I'm doing this, I'm going to make use of some other things that I have here. One of which is I have some of these little, these are basically little copper PCB boards that I have wired up to input CV out. I just plug in a 9-volt battery to them. And I can actually plug this in directly to, one of the little modulator inputs on my my Microbrute rather. So let's say, for example, I put that on the filter. Let's see, just turning some knobs real quick. And I'm just going to zoom out a little bit so you can see. All right, let's see. So this is just for a bit of a look into my mind. Here is a damp sponge, which will help me get a bit more connectivity out of this little copper board because it's going to wet my skin slightly. So here's the effect that we get if I have it set up to the filter. Let's see, let's turn that up a little bit and turn this down a little bit. See if I can get, let's see. Oh no, my battery might be dead. That'd be sad. Let's see. Just gonna hold that. Now put it into the pitch so you can really hear the effect. Oh no, are both my batteries dead? That'd be so sad. Let me try another one. Whoa. Oh no. Alright, let me try another one. I have another little one here. Gonna just try a different chord on this first. I'd be so sad if this suddenly no longer worked. Because it was working just mere minutes ago. Let's see. Oh, there we go. I think I might have just been the chord. It was a little off. So here we go. Nice. So this is just a way that I like to, rather than necessarily using this mod wheel, which I do like generally, but I feel like this allows me to give sort of more rhythmically precise. And it's just, frankly, a lot more fun. It's really responsive to the touch, which I find enjoyable. So in any case, I think let's start by making sort of just a little bass sound on this. And then I'm going to add some other sounds in using my Microfreak and my keyboard and vocal sample. So let's start by just really getting our sawtooth wave in here. Or square wave, rather. Nice. So I think I am, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit of sub on there underneath my main square wave. I'm going to turn the glide off just for right now. Let's get that envelope amount up so that we have a bit of a peak at the beginning of our sound and it sort of tapers off. Let's turn our filter down. All right, already starting to get something pretty usable. I'm going to turn up the keyboard tracking a little bit so that as we go a little bit higher up our instrument, we will start to open up a little more. Start a little bit lower. Nice. I think I do want to map this to LFO amount, and I'm going to get that set up to sort of a vibrato sound. So I'm going to go to the triangle wave on the LFO and set this fairly low and kind of fast on the rate. Maybe I can do, let's see. Actually, you know what I want to do? I think I would like to instead, I'd like to map this to the sub amount, the LFO. And I'd like to set it to a square wave. And now that's going to sort of give me an automatic like octave sound because it's just going to go, you know, it's setting the amount of the sub oscillator, which is an octave down. So when the square wave is at its peak, then, you know, we go down an octave more or less. And then when it disappears, we go up an octave. And here's what it sounds like. Hello? Oh, it's not plugged all the way in. That'll cause a problem. Nice. I think I might have that, you know, not too high, but, you know, noticeable still. And that'll sort of create a bit of movement in our sub. Nice. Let's go ahead and add some brute factor in. And now we have, you know, we have our little CV control pad hooked up to the filter. So as I'm playing, I can sort of and if I wanted to, I could, and in fact I do want to, I could get my second little CV pad set up to control the pitch. And I think I'm going to have it just slightly. This is an effect I like to do sometimes to just, it's sort of like a bend on a guitar. It's not even a whole semitone, it's just like a couple cents. But this sort of, let's see here if I can, let me take that out for now, turn up the filter a little bit. Let's see, I'm just going to hold a note. It's a bit more than I want right now. And something worth noting, as I feel the electricity tingle through my hands, is that you can actually complete a circuit between these two things. And so what happens is basically you're getting the voltage from both 9-volt batteries going into you and then into each of these. I would not necessarily recommend you try this at home, but it can be fun. But that also leads to a more intense, you know, effect. So if I have just my hand on this one, you know, there's not a huge effect on the pitch. But if I go on both, much more noticeable effect. So maybe I'll, you know, I'll use my knob to set the amount that this controls to fairly low. That's the lowest I can set it with this active right now. But I think, you know, I'm just sort of going to use this as an accent sometimes. It's more or less going down an octave right now. And it's cool that it has a sort of a sweep down to that note. I like that. Okay, so I think for now... I think I sort of like this basic sound that I have set up here. I'm probably going to fine tune it as we go on, but for now I'd sort of like to just get something going. So what I'm going to do is I am going to just put this sound to the side for a minute and just come up with a quick sound on my Microfreak. And I think I'm probably, let's see, so we got that sort of clean, plucky bass sound. We have a nice sort of tremolo Rhodes sound on my my Yamaha. Which, hold on, I think there's an effect on here I have to turn down. Let's see. Nice, okay, there we go. So we have those. I think I'm gonna try and make sort of a pad on the Microfreak real quick. I'm just gonna go to an init patch here, turn the volume up. Let's see, so before I put any effects on here, I am just gonna go ahead and get the rough shape of the sound that I want. So once again, I'm sort of controlling the keys from my key step and controlling the knobs on here. I'll do an in-depth sort of look at the Microfreak in another stream. It's a really great synth, but pretty complex, at least compared to the Microbrute. So a little bit above my pay grade for tonight. In any case, I think I'm going to just make a pretty basic pad to start. So what I'm going to do is, let's decide which synth I want to use. Let's use the harmonic synth. Let's get a pretty slow attack going, drop the sustain a bit, and set the filter to the envelope. See what it sounds like. Paraphonic, so we can play multiple notes. Nice. Good start. Set the resonance up a little bit. Let's go ahead and map. I'm going to go into settings, let's set the press mode to velocity so I can more easily use it on here, on my key step. And let's set the press to cut off, 25%. Maybe a little higher. Start with that for now. Let's go ahead and okay, let's get an LFO going to pitch. Let's say about half a semitone. And let's set that to let's have it be sort of regular. I'm just going to use a sine wave for now, and I'm going to say every 4 bars. It'll go through a cycle. See what that sounds like to start. I'm going to speed it up and turn the intensity down a bit. All right, let's get a slightly, I think I want to do sort of, let's see. Let's get that, I'm gonna get the cutoff off of here. I think it's starting a little too high. Oh, you know what, I can just double tap, can't I? There we go. Yeah, I sort of want a bit of a faster sort of brass sound here. Nice. Let's think about how we can use some of the timbre and wave and shape stuff. Let's map that to the envelope. So that'll go up with the envelope, start pretty low. Set that down a little bit. And you know what I want to do is I want to map one of these parameters to the amount that this is controlling. Hold on. I don't think I did that quite right. There we go. So let's say, yeah, velocity is now going to affect how much we're changing the timbre there. All right, do a little bit more. And real quick, let's see what we can do by changing the shape. And the wave. All right. I think I'm going to leave that here for now. Just going to add in a little bit of delay from my Pi sound. Let's go add that in. So now we have, and you know what, I'm just going to save myself a little bit of trouble. And for now, I'm going to set up some chords here. Let's just do a nice, can I reach this B? Nice. So let's do some split fifths. Save that, set that to a major key. So now I have it set up. Oh no! I just moved my, that was silly. All right, so now I have it set up so that this is all tuned to C major. So now I can just just hold one key and do some chords. With that set, I am just going to go ahead and get started making something. I don't really have a plan here, but I think we will figure something out. Let me turn this slightly. Marginally more appealing of a setup. You know, actually, let me take 2 seconds. You know, I'll move it after I get the drums keyed in. Let's do that. All right, let's get some drums. All right. Let's see what we got for tempo. Turn it down a little bit. All right, let's think. All right, let's do that. 2, 3, 4. Alright, let's get a bass going. Actually, let me start with some keys. Just change it on my keyboard. Alright, my sustain pedal got stuck. Let's get that in there. play on that. Maybe I might wanna go ahead and use my Microbrute as a lead, actually. I think that's my move. Like that. Let me make sort of more of a subby sound, like a subsine sound with my Microbrute. Get a bit of glide going, get the triangle in, overtone, pretty fast, bit of envelope, not much brute, bit of resonance. All right, let's see what we got. a solo on it. Alright, I'll say that's one little jam done. I am gonna go run, grab a glass of water. I'll play a nice little ambient patch on my Micro Freak while I'm doing that. So you have something nice to listen to. Let's see what we got. Oh. Not that guy. Yeah, let's do that. Actually, I'll just do let's do this is ridiculous that I'm spending time setting up a little bump for me to go get some water, but nonetheless, here we are. Alright, I'll be back in a few minutes. I'm gonna get a glass of water. Alright, cool. I have returned. So, I think for this next little thing, I am going to do a little... I'm just going to do a little ambient thing. Let's get this set up to... there we go. Let's get this set up to the filter. Okie doke. Yeah, let's do an ambient thing. I am just gonna go ahead and clear this project. Cool. Alright, so now nothing set up there. Alright, let's start from the bass. I'm definitely going to want a slow sort of building bass here. Just get that all the way down. Let's get the pulse width set to a triangle wave. Triangle up. Okay, nice and slow. Cutoff there. Brute. Let's see. Let's definitely get that sending to some reverb. actually going to go ahead and let's see. I'm going to have the envelope sending to the pitch. Not very much, but I just sort of want to have a slight, a slight little boost in the pitch at the beginning, sort of warble it out of tune a little bit. It's a good starting point. Let's go ahead and... What do I want to do for my Micro Freak? I already have lots and lots of little pads and stuff saved. Do I want to just use one of these? I'm just going to use a pre-built pad for now. Let's see. Alright, let's hear that. So with the bass, we got like... Alright, I'm going to turn that down slightly. Let's drop the cutoff on this. Yeah, I guess we can start with... Actually, you know what? I think I want to... I'll go back to these in a second. I think I want to use the Korg, the sample, as sort of a little ambient thing. So I had set up some little granular synth samples on this a couple days ago. Let me hear if I can get some of those. Yeah, all right, let's have that as sort of the basis of it. So one cool thing you can do in one cool thing you can do with the KeyStep Pro, and let me see if I can move my little camera over a little bit so you can see a little better. Really see the mess. All right, one cool thing you can do is beep, beep, beep. All right, maybe you can see a little bit. So each of these little... I have this going out as a drum output, meaning that each of these different notes here is being output as a separate sort of drum sound, which, does not make a huge difference, but one nice thing is that we can, rather than setting everything out as sort of one big MIDI file, we can actually set it up so that like each of these has its own track. So for example, like this, if I want to play it every 4 notes, right, I can just set that up in the step sequencer and we can hear that. Let's turn that down. And then I can also, if I wanted to, set the probability that each of those will play, right? So I could set each of those to like, say 65%. So, every now and again it'll miss one. Like that. And I can do that for each of these. And not only that, I can set them up to play rather than playing in the same meter, I can set it up to polymeter. So that, like, let's say I get a little loop going between these two. I can have this one playing only every, 8 steps, and then this one's playing every 6 steps. And then I could just each have them, like, play, I don't know, let's say there and there, with a certain amount of probability. Let's hear what that sounds like to start. And I might have this actually set up to, let's say, 10 step. So I'm just going to do something like that with each of these tracks and sort of make a little generative piece here. So let's hear. I think I'm going to pitch this one up. I don't want it super duper low because I am going to be using the Microbrute as the bass for this, but let's just go ahead and get that going every, let's say 12 steps. Oh, no, that's not how that works. It's every that many. All right. And let's get a little randomness on there, of course. These two I'm just going to have in a sort of 6/4 polyrhythm. Let's say like 50% of the time it'll play. That I'm just going to have every 2 beats. And this every 5 beats. That. There we go. Cool. All right. Let's hear what we got. Okay, nice. I am already sort of liking this. I think I'm just going to set up some quick little high cuts on here. Oh no. Oh, dear viewers, one of these days I will get a more decent camera setup than a very cheap tripod setup on top of my desk, but that day's not today. Let's get some high cuts set up. All right, let's hear what that sounds like now. All right, I'm liking that. And I actually might go ahead and let's see if I can just go ahead and send that to my delay instead of my Microfreak. So hold on just a sec. Let's hear that. Cool. So now I just have to get my Microfreak set up to just have it go Scooby-Doo right into here. Beautiful. Okay. Nice. Great. All right, let's move this back. Readjust. Just such a good view. Okay. And let's just go ahead and get started. Oh, first, I guess, let me make sure this is actually somewhat in tune. All right, it'll be, things will be sort of coming in and out of tune, I guess, but that is, you know, for the genre, you could do worse. All right. Let's just enjoy ourselves. Here's a nice, yeah, let's do a nice little slow one here. Okay. Let's get that down to 50. Just realized I've been doing this in mono the whole time, for which I apologize, but figured it out eventually. Well, I think that is as good a place to stop as any. Um, Thank you for joining me on this first stream. And sorry about the several technical difficulties throughout. Hopefully, I'll iron those out as we get further on. Right now, I have it set up pretty well if I'm recording straight from my computer from my DAW, but getting the analog to show is a little bit harder because it takes up some space, and space is difficult. But in any case, I appreciate you tuning in. This was a bit more of a free-form one than some of my synth making videos have been recently. But I will probably be making some more in-depth educational, I guess, videos on Helm and synth making in general again over the coming days. So look out for those. And in the meantime, take care of yourself, drink some water, and I'll see you around. Have a good night.